Hi there. Today I'm working on a page that I started probably a month ago, and I really didn't like how it was going, so I just set it aside, and now I've come back to it, so I'm kind of part of the way in already. The problem I had before was I was trying to do it as a one-page spread with 4 of these photos, these 4 here in the middle, and it was just too crowded, especially since I had this card that I wanted to add. So I decided to spread it out onto 2 pages and add a couple of additional photos from the same day. I'm using some soft suede cardstock from Stampin' Up! As the background. Very often when you do a cardstock background like this, or really anything where you have 2 pages that are exactly the same, you need something to break it up. So that's what I'm looking at now, is what I'm going to do to not have so much of the same background. Before, when I was working on it, I had cut these papers up. I'm not sure why I had them cut in these sizes, but I knew I wanted to use these in some way. So what I'm looking at doing now is using them over here on the side, doing little squares. I'll probably bring this photo, do a little more cropping and bring that underneath there. Is turning these into squares and then putting some embellishment and design on top of them, maybe a butterfly to match the chair that my mother's seated in. And I was going to do 3 butterflies, but I got thinking about it that I might do something besides that and do some other things on these for some embellishment groups over here. And then on this side, I really love this paper from Little Yellow Bicycle. It's part of the Fern and Forest collection, the wood grain. It matches my background paper beautifully. However, it matches so good it just blends completely into the background. And I'm planning to put my letters on top of it and use it as kind of a little sign that sort of goes with the whole theme of this page and the location and stuff that we were at, and especially all the woodworking they had going on the day that we were there, the wood pieces they were showing in the gallery. But it's got too much of the brown and too much of the wood kind of look here, so I need something to go down here, and I've had several things out. I considered using just a different colored solid piece of cardstock, and I'm not sure about that. Then I had a color that was almost exactly like that but in this print, and I like it. However, it doesn't really do much for the surrounding photos, not like this paper does, the pink paper. So right now I'm leaning towards using a pink paper because that just really makes the other photos pop so much. And I'll be able to see that better, I think, if I do something with these letters. And since I know I want them on this, that's the next thing I'm going to do, is just go ahead and ink the edges of this and glue these on and make my part of my title. And I'll need the word gallery down here. I may cut that out on the Cricut. So I've got a few things I can do and start playing with, and then kind of pull the rest of the page together. I do like this arrangement of photos, and I will do a sketch for this when it's done and include that over on my blog.
Adding some vintage photo distress ink to this wood grain paper, and then gluing my letters on. The stick-on back is not going to be sufficient to hold them, so they're going to need some extra glue. Just the zig glue pen will be enough. And I had already laid these out to know that they would take up that full space, so I kind of started on each end and then worked my way towards the middle. These are some older basic gray letters. We get a lot of them in a pack. Now my 3 little squares, I cut out a butterfly on the Cricut to put on one, and I just didn't like it. And I went back to the idea of doing perhaps 3 butterflies, but doing them stamped, and then maybe adding some other embellishment with them. Over on the right-hand side, I'm trying to decide whether I want to leave that pink paper going all the way across. It seemed like it was a lot. I had a little bit extra cardstock there so I could play with it and see whether I thought cutting the pink paper down would work well and just doing a square in the lower right hand corner. And I liked that quite a bit because the picture of my husband didn't look that great laying on the pink paper. And I'm going to need a butterfly over here as well. Unfortunately, the butterfly I have is facing the wrong way. I can fix that though with some reverse stamping. It's a technique I just learned. It's been around a long time, but I hadn't tried it before till recently. I'll show you how to do that. I am stamping on vellum, and that takes a lot of embossing powder because vellum really picks up, or excuse me, a lot of the embossing buddy, because your vellum really picks up the embossing powder easily. I'm using pewter embossing powder from Stampin' Up, which is it's a very silvery color. It's maybe not quite as dark a pewter as I had hoped when I ordered it, but it still gives a really pretty color. Now for this one that's going the wrong direction, the way I'm going to do it is I'm using a piece of transparency film, and I'm stamping the image on the transparency film, then taking it while it's wet and turning the transparency film over and rolling the image then from the transparency film onto the vellum. And you could do this on paper. In fact, it works a little better on paper. Transparency film to vellum slides just a little bit, so it blurred just slightly, but you still get a really nice image. And now the butterfly is facing to the left, which is where I want him to go. I'm going to heat these up. Obviously, I'm working at a much faster speed, or showing this at a much faster speed. I think it's about 3 times faster than the real speed. But still, you heat pretty fast on vellum. It doesn't take long. And a trick I learned, I think this was from Christina Werner, is to color your vellum on the back side. And I love this because you don't have to stay within the lines, which is really nice for me because I'm not the best colorer in the world. And it gives you this wonderful soft look on the reverse side. The only thing you have to keep in mind is to use a little bit darker color markers than you might normally use because they are going to be lighter when you flip this over. But it looks kind of messy right now, but it will look really pretty when it's flipped over. So I'm using various shades of reds and pinks here, and I'm going to do each butterfly in a different color scheme to go with the different background colors. And so there it is flipped over, and he's really, really pretty. And you'll see a close-up of this at the end too. Okay? And I'm going to trim him out, or her out. I don't know whether butterflies or he's or she's. This one, I do leave the antenna on, and I don't normally do that. I normally trim the antenna off, but because of the vellum and the embossing, it's a little sturdier than if it were just on paper, and it actually trims out really neatly. And it worked out good for what I was planning to do, so I didn't have to worry about coming up with antenna made out of something else or stamping it and then laying this on top, or just ignoring the antenna altogether. I got to have them. The different squares, rather than adding a dark distress ink, since they're going to be laying on a dark background, I'm adding some white paint to the edges. I like using white paint for distressing more than white ink because actually the paint dries faster than white pigment ink does. So I can just brush that on and get a nice soft effect on the edges. I did feel like they needed something though behind them, another layer, and I'm using the same color background paper, the soft suede background paper, but this time I'm adding a wood grain to it. That kind of goes with this whole wood theme that goes through this particular gallery pages. And when I heat that up, I get a little bit darker version of the paper, and you don't see a lot of the wood grain, but it's enough to have that accent there and really make those squares look more prominent. Now over on the right side, I'm going to use some craft cardstock for the journaling, and I'm trying to decide how I want to bring some of that pink over onto the left, whether I want to use a strip of the pink paper. I've got enough that I could cut a strip. I also have this pink ribbon, and I got this at a local scrapbooking store. One of the best ways to find ribbon is the local stamping stores. And this, I think, looks better than paper would. It's more interesting than paper. So I'm just putting it behind the butterflies and not behind everything. Now on the right side, I'm also going to have more title and a little bit more text over there. And one thing I'm doing right quick is adding a little bit of the Monotombo glue to the back of that card that I know that I want to stick onto the layout, and you'll see why I'm doing this in a few moments. The butterflies need a little bit of additional embellishments. I've got some wood and veneer pieces and some stickers, and I'm leaving the wood veneer pieces in the raw form, not adding any other color to them. That kind of goes with what I'm doing. And adding the glue, using the heat glue gun to put the butterflies on. And after I started putting them on, I got to thinking that maybe I could use this to help the butterflies pop up, because I really wanted the wings to pop up. And usually what I do is put dimensional adhesive behind them, but since they're vellum, I can't do that. It would show. So I thought I might add a little bit of the hot glue behind the wings, right close to the body of the butterfly. Here I'm doing this on the very bottom one. Just adding a little bit on each side of the body, and you can put as much or as little as you want there, and that's going to help those wings to stand up once that dries. And it worked really well. I was really thrilled with how this looked. It didn't show through, and it really kept the butterflies popped up there nicely. Okay, now over on the right side I've added some text and the journaling, and I added some pink over to the left to match the right side. Well, now I need to bring what's on the left side over to the right, and I've got all those designer papers, and I felt like I needed a few pieces of those over on the right side of the layout. And I just cut them in strips. I cut the chevron one sort of looks like a little arrow, and then the rest of them I just cut some strips and added a little bit of white to the edges. I'm ready to glue those down. I'm trying to figure out where that one should go. I finally decided to sort of let it go off the edge of the page. Okay, getting all of those in place. And then the only thing that seems to be missing is a little bit of color in the middle of the layout. And I'm trying a lot of different things here. I've got brads, I've got buttons I pulled out. I wasn't too happy about the buttons. I have wood veneer pieces because I have some wood veneer, excuse me, I have hearts and I have butterflies. And I thought that'd be too many butterflies. And maybe it is. Trying the hearts. Then I went back to washi tape. Washi tape is my all-purpose thing for adding a little bit of extra color, just pops here and there. Because it's so easy to put it on there and see if you like it, and it's transparent, so it's not that bold. I really like the pink washi tape. And the butterflies, just a couple of them look pretty good. When I had 3, I think I had a little bit too much. The hearts are not bad, so those are still a good contender. And I just spent quite a bit of time fiddling with this and combining things, and I'm close to the end of the layout, so it's fun to play around a little bit and add a few different embellishments. Now this card that I added the Tombow adhesive becomes tacky when you just let it dry and don't attach it to anything, so that's the way the card is going to be left. And I put a paper clip on it to indicate that you can pull it off and look at what's on the back and then just tack it back in place like a post-it. Now here are my butterflies on the completed layout, and they really pop up with that bit of hot glue around the edges, so I was real tickled with how this came out. I ended up with the hearts and a couple of layers of washi tape in just 2 places. I normally do like a triangle of 3 things, but just one on each side was enough to bridge the gap between the 2 pages, I thought. And there's my butterfly that's facing the correct direction. And if check out my blog for more information, and please leave comments if you have any questions. Thank you.